This is the Drummers Resource Podcast, Session 9. And the quote of the day is from Thomas Edison, who said, "Opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and it looks like work."
You're listening to the Drummers Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Raffini, and we're coming at you with information, education, and motivation for drumming and beyond.
What's going on, everybody? Nick Raffini here with the Drummers Resource Podcast, and we got a great interview today. I got the one and only Ndugu Chancler on the show, and for those of you who don't know who Ndugu is, you need to look him up. He has played with everybody from Michael Jackson, Bobby Hutchinson, Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock, George Duke, George Benson, Carlos Santana, and the list goes on and on and on. He played on Michael Jackson's Thriller, which is the top-selling record of all time, top-selling pop record of all time, and they have sold 50 million records, and that's certified, and I've read places that it may be upwards of 100 million records sold. And Ndugu is a super humble, super talented drummer, clinician, producer. He's been nominated for 3 Grammy Awards, and his list of credits are just amazing. But let's get into the interview. I'm so thankful that he's here to do this. Ndugu, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad to be a part of it.
So growing up, I know that you grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana, and you started playing. I guess you started relatively at an older age, at 13. Would you say?
I started at 13, and by then we had moved to Los Angeles.
Okay, so you weren't playing when you were in Shreveport. Okay.
No, I didn't do anything in Shreveport.
Okay, I got you. So at 13, what did you? What were you playing? What were you practicing? You know, what was your routine?
Well, I started off on snare drum, so I started playing rudiments and starting to learn to read in beginning band.
Okay.
And then I went to drum set and percussion while I was in beginning band. You know, you played bass drum and snare drum and cymbals. And by the time I got to high school, you played timpani and glockenspiel and all the other percussion in the orchestra and the band.
Mm-hmm.
And at that same time, I was working on drum set on the side.
Okay. And I remember hearing a quote of yours that you said that the one thing that you made sure that there was never any holes in your playing. Can you kind of walk us down that road a little bit of how you worked on all those styles and how you mastered all those styles?
Well, here's the thing about holes. We talk about holes. The first thing we got to talk about is covering all the bases, and the bases being technically sound, fundamentally sound, stylistically sound.
Mm-hmm.
So that means the first thing you got to do is get your technique together and your fundamentals, your reading, and then you learn to play all the different styles of music. And you really immerse yourself in those styles and really learn them. I don't mean play at them.
Right.
I mean get into them.
Right.
And I worked hard at that because that was my concept of what music was. Music wasn't subdivided like it is now. Music was just everything.
Right.
And it was all music. So that was what I worked on, being able to play with anybody, anything.
So now, did you, when you were going through these different styles, did you learn one at a time, or were you trying to learn them all at the same time?
No, because music. First of all, music cross-pollinates, and while you're learning one, you also learn another one. I mean, just for example, if you learn to play jazz, you're learning early pop music.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so while you're learning to play jazz, you're learning early Afro-Cuban music. Because when you start playing bebop, you started playing Afro-Cuban rhythm.
Mm-hmm. And
so it wasn't segmented like people look at it now. It was all a part of the same thing. I mean, for example, you learn to play shuffles, you automatically learning to play Motown.
Right.
And you're playing jazz shuffles at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't look at it broken up like that. I looked at it as an inclusive.
I see. So you're saying now that everybody says it's either blues or it's either jazz or it's either funk.
Yeah, they want to put a label and compartmentalize their approach to playing music.
Right. Right. That makes sense. So when you were you started when you were learning all these styles and you were in LA, how did you get yourself onto the scene? I mean, you played on some major records. So what's that path
All those
like?
people were around here. All these people were around here, and one thing leads to another. For example, I played with Gerald Wilson Big Band. That exposed me to a lot of people. I worked with Harold Land as a result of that. Harold Land was in the big band. Harold Land and Bobby Hutcherson called me to be a part of their small group. I worked with Alice Coltrane. That brought me to Santana. I recorded with George Duke and Herbie Hancock and Walter Bishop Jr. That introduced me to Miles Davis. So everything links up some kind of way.
Mm-hmm. And do you think it's more of it's obvious? I mean, your playing speaks for itself. But do you think that getting those gigs was your playing or the friends and networks that you were in, or a combination of both?
The combination of that and being in a good place at a good time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of things. You can never say one thing got you there. I had great associations with some great musicians. They liked me. They liked my playing enough to connect me with other people.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And because I'm sure that you're in LA, there's a ton of people there that can play well, but if you're not good to get along with, or you're not professional or something like that, I'm guessing you're not getting hired for the gig.
Right.
So, I'd definitely like to touch on the Thriller record. It's the most selling pop record of all time. What was that like? What was that process like, working with Michael? And
everybody only talks about Michael, but that was a team. That was Quincy Jones, Bruce Swedien, and Michael Jackson. That's what made that whole thing the phenomenal success it was. It was an innovative production style. It was an innovative musical performance style, and it was an innovative engineering style that made that the big record it was. It was a technological breakthrough. It was a producing conceptual breakthrough, and it was a performance breakthrough. So what I was a part of, without really knowing it, was the pioneering of what was going to become a new standard in how records were made. You got to understand, Pro Tools is patterned after what Bruce Swedien did technically with Thriller.
Really?
With tape. Yeah.
Can you explain it a little bit more?
Yeah. Back then, we were syncing up 4 and 5 tape machines together to get all of those multiple tracks.
Right.
So they had SMPTE, and the SMPTE code locked all those machines together. Now you got Pro Tools, you can have hundreds of tracks together in a computer. Mm-hmm. Bruce did editing and all of that by hand. He cut the tape with a razor blade. All of that, all of those things are now part of Pro Tools. All of the outboard gear, the compression, all of those concepts of recording. Guys like Bruce Swedien and George Matzenberg pioneered, and Alan Sides, they pioneered all of this stuff in their natural recording techniques. Right. And they started to incorporate all of these things in the box called Pro Tools.
So basically they did all the hard work, and then someone came along and just digitalized it, and then
because that was, we were on the brink of doing digital records then.
Right.
I work with Quincy a lot, and I remember on the Frank Sinatra record, we recorded it both analog and digital, so we would have it both ways.
Oh, okay.
So all those were the pioneering aspects of the new concepts of recording.
Right.
Production-wise, Quincy Jones had this new concept of making every song a single, which meant his pre-production, he threw out a lot of songs, a lot of good songs, because they had to fit in with the concept, but they also had to be singles worthy.
So he wanted every song on the record to be a single.
Yeah.
And that hadn't been done before.
Not since the early days of the 50s and 60s, when you took a bunch of singles and combined that to make a LP.
Okay. Huh. I never knew that about that record.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
He called every song like a Polaroid.
Mm-hmm.
And every Polaroid should be able to stand on its own.
That makes sense. So were you working with Quincy before that record a lot as well?
Yes. That's how I got turned on to that record, was Quincy.
Oh, okay.
Quincy had a stable of drummers that he used,
Mm-hmm.
and I just happened to be one of them. Myself, JR, Jeff Bacall, Ricky Lawson, and Harvey Mason.
Okay.
And my number just got called for Thriller. JR got called for Off the Wall. My number just happened to come up for Thriller.
So going backwards from that, it's a long journey from starting at 13 to ending up there. And I know that there's a lot of people out there, young up and coming drummers, that are trying to do the same things that you've done. You've had a widely successful career. And what advice would you have for those guys that are coming up that are trying to
cover all your bases? Learn to read, learn to write, learn to arrange, enjoy every style of music for exactly what it is. Don't think negative about anything that you do or anything that you don't like. Find the good in every aspect of music and learn to work with anybody. Take your personal feelings out of a lot of things and satisfy who you're working for and do a good job consistently.
That's wise words. Wise words. There was another thing that I heard that you said that you've never gotten called to do a drum solo, but everybody calls you to sit back and lay in the pocket and just play the groove.
Right, because that's a humbling aspect of playing music. Drum solos are basically for your own stamp and signature, not necessarily for the people that hire you. You're working with a singer. They don't want to hear a drum solo. They want to hear you make them sound good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what people call me for.
Sure. Now, there was I interviewed James Gadsden a few weeks ago as well, and we kind of got into his sound and developing his sound. Because I think when you hear someone like yourself or someone like James on a record, you can tell definitively that it's them. So how did you develop your sound, and how did you develop that really nice backbeat and feel that you have?
By listening to myself over and over in recording and deciding the aspects of my playing that I liked, that sounded good, and that I should keep and to promote. And you know, through that, you start to find what other people like, but also what you like. And then you start to grow from that.
Okay. So were you listening to just recordings of you playing, or playing on records and different things?
I listen to myself, but I listen to everyone else too, because it had to be in comparison to everyone else.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
You always have to ask yourself, why would someone call me versus someone else?
Right. So making sure that A, you can play as many styles as possible, and B, you can play everything correctly and make it feel good and make everybody else comfortable around you, because you're an accompanist rather than a soloist. And
give them the sound that they want and the sound that you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm just looking at the different records that you've played on and everything. What is your the thing that you're most proud about that in your playing and in your career so far?
The diversity of the recordings I've done, from Weather Report and Santana to Frank Sinatra to Lionel Richie and Kenny Rogers to Michael Jackson to some of the more avant-garde things like John Carter and Bobby Bradford and Julian Priester and Herbie Hancock and Wadisi, stuff like that. I mean, there's a variety. If you look at my playing, it goes through a whole variety, which is the evolution of this music.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best pop, some of the best funk, some of the creative, innovative jazz fusion, some of the avant-garde, and some of the notable pop and country singers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a wide span of music going from like the Miles Davis stuff to Michael Jackson and you know, Jazz Prophets and Harold Johnson and all that stuff. It's all, like you said, it's a wide variety. And I saw you a couple weeks ago at the Vic Firth 50th anniversary party. And you know, that was a jazz gig, and then if it turned into a pop gig, you could have just stayed on the stage, which is refreshing because I don't think that a lot of players play like that anymore.
Right. That's important to me because that's the lineage and the evolution of this music.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be able to dig deep and go into all of those because that's the music.
Right. And that's but all the players years ago were like that, weren't they? I mean, everybody played.
Yeah.
Everybody played everything.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's changing now?
Because radio changed.
Mm-hmm.
And training changed. A guy would lock into one thing and he'd say, he's this or he's that.
Right.
So they'd say, well, I'm a gospel drummer. I'm a funk drummer. I'm a pop drummer. Not just I'm a musician.
Right.
And that changed the whole dynamic of what you could do and who you could do it with. I mean, if you say you're a pop drummer, you got to be able to say big band, regular pop, traditional pop. You know, all those kind of styles are inclusive in pop. The same thing with rock or jazz. You cover the history of that music. But nowadays, that lineage only goes back maybe 20 years with the depth of someone's playing.
Right. So yeah, I guess now, you know, a lot of drummers are selling themselves short and not learning, like you said, the lineage and the history of the instrument. And you know, a lot of guys are rock drummers, but they don't know who Chuck Berry is or something like that. You know,
right.
And you're saying that that's from the radio, from the way that radio.
Yeah, because they only hear one or two genres.
Right.
Their educational span only goes one or two genres.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got guys now that are teaching drums that don't make all their students learn all 40 rudiments.
Say that again? Your phone kind of cut out there a little bit.
You got teachers now that are teaching drums that don't make all of their students learn all 40 rudiments.
Right. Which
that's like telling a saxophone player, don't learn all of your scales. You won't need them.
Right. And I think now that I've even had problems with some of my students that they don't see the value in the rudiments, and I don't know if that's because of the instant gratification kind of thing, that they can't see the big picture of what they're useful for. So if you have a student that doesn't see the value in the rudiments, how would you get them to
demonstrate it?
Demonstrate it.
Mm-hmm. Take the rudiments and do 10 different things with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll wonder, because those students that aren't enamored by the rudiments, they're enamored by licks. Right. And their first question is, how did you do that? Well, the first question shouldn't be, how did you do it? It should be, what did you do?
Right.
And the what did you do comes into that rudimental thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I try to explain that with everybody, with students, that it's allowing yourself to interact between your hands and play singles and doubles in any possible combination that you can think of to give yourself more versatility.
That's right.
And but it's hard. I mean, it's definitely, especially kids, the kids nowadays. I mean, I don't know how young your students go.
I don't take them too young.
No.
I need them to have some fundamental foundation before I start to deal with it.
Right. I can see that. Yeah, it's definitely tough. So, so what are you currently working on now?
Just finished a record with Byron Miller.
Okay.
Myself and the late great George Duke and Byron Miller, we were a rhythm section for years. So just before George died, we did a few tracks for Byron Miller's album. I have a trio album coming out. I got to start mixing on it right after Christmas with myself, Patrice Rushen, and Rhonda Smith.
Okay.
Those are the two main things that I'm working on right now.
Okay. Now, do you still do a lot of pop session work or no?
Not as much, no.
No.
I do some. I have a home studio, and I do some from the home. People send tracks to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did some sessions for the Mendez brothers.
Oh, okay.
These are Cape Verdean producers. I just did some tracks for those guys, and every now and then I get called to do some stuff. I still work with David T. Walker,
Mm-hmm.
and we go out and play. So those are the main things I'm doing, along with me still teaching jazz and pop at USC.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been at USC?
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you prefer the educational side, or do you prefer the performance side better?
It's both.
Yeah.
One feeds the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one feeds.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You've seen the changes of where the music industry was and where it is now and where it's going. And so what do you think the direction of it is, in the next 10, 15, 20 years for drummers?
Well, I think for musicians, period, now's a good time for musicians to get back in and shape the music the way they want to, because they have the freedom now of playing and recording whatever they want to play and record, and having a vehicle to promote it and it be heard. Not necessarily radio, but the internet, iTunes, and all of these different mediums now. You can create your own direction, and it can have an audience. So I think that has opened up the playing field again for musicians to be creative beings again and
Mm-hmm.
create new music.
Do you think that the musicians now are less creative than they were 25 years ago?
Well, no, I can't say that. I feel like a lot of that music doesn't get heard.
Mm-hmm.
I think musicians are still creating, but a lot of times they don't create because they have no medium or vehicle to promote what they're creating.
Right. Right. Like you said about pop, years ago in the 50s, and the pop music was the big band stuff, and that was everybody could get their music heard, so to speak. But now it just seems like if you're not in a certain genre, then there's no medium, like you said, to get it out there.
Right. But now
So,
there is a medium to get it out there. So now you can put out whatever you feel like you believe in. You can create it now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you look at an Adele, that was a little against the grain. Great songs, but a little against the grain for what was standardized at that point. But look how big that was.
Right.
And that's due to just taking a gamble. Look at Corinne Bailey Rae. Look
Mm-hmm.
at Leanne DeHavis. All of those. They're doing what they felt and believed in, and there's a market for it.
Sure. And I've had this conversation numerous times with numerous people that I feel like years ago there was a proving ground, or a process that you had to go through, because everybody couldn't record records because it was so expensive. So the cream always rose to the top. So now there's no barriers to entry, so to speak. So I always wonder, it's kind of a double-edged sword for me, because I said, does that mean that all of the people that shouldn't make it through, they make it through. But at the same time, it's allowing the people that should make it through to be able to make it through on their own. So,
well, do those that don't deserve to make it through, do they really make it through? Because those that don't deserve to make it through have no longevity.
right.
And those that really have put the time and the work into this, they have longevity. They can come back again and again. I mean, you got institutions, legends, and people that have been doing this for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I mean, you take someone like Prince, that's staying power.
Mm-hmm.
You take a Stevie Wonder, that's staying power. That's not like a 3 or 5 year run. That's a whole, a couple of decades. So
Sure.
that's staying power. But that's staying power based on direction, evolution of direction, great songs, great playing.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's a lot of times, everybody says that if a tune's out, and it's hot, everybody knows, well, they'll be gone in a year and no one will ever talk about them again,
Yeah.
So I guess that is the barometer of your longevity speaks for whether the medium was there or not. I think that, say Prince was out now, I think he would still do exactly what he did years ago.
That's right.
He would still break
That's
through
right.
and stay there.
That's right.
It's an interesting way to look at it. I never thought of it that way. So we have a lot of up and coming drummers that listen to this. So if you have any bits of advice or words of wisdom that you can share with them, that would be great.
So the player has to do much more listening than the listener coming to enjoy the music. And if that player is doing that listening, he will become a great player.
That is wise words. Wise words. I appreciate that. So yeah, like I said, thank you so much for doing this. It was really a pleasure, and hearing some of your insight and hearing some of these stories have been great. I sincerely appreciate it.
Not a problem. Call me anytime. And I got a new book out now.
You do?
My book is called Pocket Change. It's by Ndugu Chancler. It's an ebook available on Amazon, iTunes, all that available for Kindle Nook and iPads and iPhones and all of that. I have some hard copies, but I'm pushing the green thing of the ebook, so that's the way I'm really pushing the sales of it.
Okay. Yep, I see it right here on Amazon. And I'll in the show notes for this interview, I'll put the link to where you can buy it as well.
Yeah.
I will definitely do that. Yeah, I'm going to buy it right now. Buy it now with one click. There we go. Done. It's on it. It's already bought. It's on its way to my house.
All right. If you have any questions about anything in there, call me.
I definitely will. And like I said, I'll put the link on here, and hopefully some of the listeners will go out and buy it too. I'm sure that it's great. I'm really excited about it now. I've been looking for a new book to read, so this will be perfect.
Well, it's some good reading there. I mean, yeah, they're drum exercises, but it's my philosophy and all that on how you get there. So
Okay.
You can tie that into the interview you just did, because there are a lot of things in that book that I talk about that are things that helped me build this whole career.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I think a lot of, that's why I started this website, the Drummers Resource, because I want it to be a place where drummers can go and they can find out more than just, how to play, a rudiment or how to play on, like, I think that there's not a lot of information out there of like how to promote yourself, how to.
Right. Well, I deal with a lot of those things in the book.
Oh,
how
okay,
to take
great.
care of your business, how to present yourself, all of that, how to read contracts, all of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I can't wait to check it out. I read through Zorro's book, The Big Gig, which I thought was really insightful. So I'm looking for I'm guessing this is kind of along the same lines of that in terms of, the things other than your playing that you need to take into consideration as well.
Right.
So great. I'm excited to read it. I'm like I said, it'll be here in 2 days. So
All right.
great.
All
Well,
right,
Ndugu,
brother.
again, thank you so much. And, I'll definitely be in touch soon.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks. Have a good day.
All right.
All right. See you.
Bye-bye.
So that was the man himself, Mr. Ndugu Chancler. Be sure to check him out at nduguchancler.com. That's NDUGU Chancler.com. Check us out online, drummersresource.com, facebook.com/drummersresource, or if you want to get at me on Twitter, I'm at Nick_Ruffini, RUFFINI. And if you want to get these podcasts earlier than everyone else, sign up for the VIP list at drummersresource.com, and I'll send you a link where you can download the podcast before they're released. Also in the show notes, you can check out Ndugu's new book, Pocket Change, as well as some other resources that are on there. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you later. Peace.